Breaking news here on GB News Live. It is official. Rishi Sunak has signed a breakthrough deal, as it's been described, with the European Union over the post-Brexit trading arrangements for Northern Ireland, and will now seek to win the backing of unionists and Tory Eurosceptics. That's being reported by the Press Association. Of course, we saw the Prime Minister and the EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen meeting at that Fairmont Hotel in Windsor Great Park. They've finalised this long-awaited agreement to ease the trading issues created by the protocol. All this coming from a senior government source. We understand that the details will now be relayed to the Cabinet on what's a virtual meeting. Then there will be a news conference, and then following that, Rishi Sunak will address the Commons at 6:30. In addition, we're being told Ursula von der Leyen meeting the King for tea at Windsor. Whether that's to celebrate or not, we don't know, but certainly that's caused some controversy itself. But let's speak now to Liam Halligan, who's joining us in the studio, because clearly part of the process was to get the nuts and bolts, the custom agreement, sorted out in terms of what we call the green and the red channels, but also this huge question then of sovereignty and the role of the European Courts of Justice and what Jeffrey Donaldson described as the democratic deficit. And to explain to people, this was not going to be agreed by the ERG group, the Tories, the Brexiteers, unless the DUP gave a thumbs up.
You know, we don't actually know what's in the deal yet. All we know is that a deal's been done. We're all still feeling in the dark. We don't even know if the DUP itself, the Democratic Unionist Party, has seen the outlines of this deal. So just while we're waiting for a bit more substance, it's worth just acknowledging that for most viewers and listeners, this is sort of head-explodingly complicated, and it really is quite complicated. It all goes back to the fact that Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland obviously share a land border, and the EU, because the republics in the European Union are worried that goods are going to go from Northern Ireland into the Republic of Ireland that don't align with the rules of the single market. Yeah. A lot of people think that is a wildly over-exaggerated fear, but that is
reality.
That is the fear that the EU have. For a long time, after Boris Johnson's deal, there's been a border down the Irish Sea. So when goods go from ports in GB, the mainland, to Larne and other ports in Northern Ireland, they're subject to extensive checks. And a lot of pretty neutral business leaders say the checks that the EU's been imposing between GB and Northern Ireland have been massively over-egged. And they say the EU is being deliberately obstructionist. But again, that is the reality that we're dealing with. So what Rishi Sunak's been trying to do is to secure a deal with the EU where the checks between GB, the mainland, and Northern Ireland, obviously together they form the UK, that those checks are much, much less. And he does seem to have secured some kind of easing of those bureaucratic arrangements with these so-called red channels and green channels. So it's in the green channel if it's definitely staying in Northern Ireland. It goes through a red channel if it's going through Northern Ireland.
With the EU checks.
In order to go to the Republic of Ireland. But, you know, if you're going to sell stuff in the Republic of Ireland, just send it to Dublin anyway, right? Yeah. So it's all...
Why bother going through a land border?
Why go to Larne? Yeah. So a lot of it is academic. But for a lot of unionists, right, they completely object to any border of any kind between GB and Northern Ireland. That is anathema to them constitutionally. And what they also don't like is that the European Court of Justice, which is the EU's court, if you like, will oversee some of the rulemaking in Northern Ireland. Now, that we think has been watered down. We think there's some kind of Northern Ireland-based body, if there's any disputes about regulations, that will first try and sort some of them out, and that only go to the ECJ, the European Court of Justice, as a final
or even be reverted back to Westminster before that process begins. Let's just update people. We're just getting a bit more, just to remind you that the official announcement from the Prime Minister's spokesman, an agreement has been reached, the deal is done, close quotes. But, of course, we reflect that the DUP says it will take its time to consider the detail. This is from Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, the party leader, and measure a deal against our 7 tests. And as we've just been discussing with Liam, unless the DUP are happy, the ERG won't be happy. But just to reflect on one thing that we heard earlier, Steve Baker, the Northern Ireland Office Minister, who'd been on resignation watch, as it's described.
Brexiteer.
Yeah, he was quite happy earlier, and he's been party to what the agreement's going to
He was quite happy. On the other hand, and I know Steve well, I've known for many, many years, he's basically taken a decision pretty publicly, having been a rebel all his life, having been one of the Spartans, the 28 Tory Brexiteer MPs who refused again to vote for Theresa May's deal, arguably forcing Brexit in the way we have it now, arguably giving Boris Johnson the opportunity to topple Theresa May and come back and win that election in December 2019. No one's surprised, really, among Westminster watchers, with all respect to him, if Steve Baker agrees with this deal, because he was never going to resign, unless I'm completely mistaken. What's really interesting, Mark, as we wait for the actual details, is the kind of dark arts of politics that we're seeing now. What we're seeing, we're hearing, you know, from semi-official sources. We're hearing from semi-official sources a couple of half an hour ago that the DUP agree with this deal, and then we've had the leader of the DUP, Geoffrey Donaldson, say we didn't say that. We didn't say we agree with it. But
just to reflect, Doogie in Stormont was saying when he spoke to them, you know, the impression he was getting, it hasn't frightened the horses. That was a phrase.
Okay,
that was
have they seen it, or have they just been told about it?
And Geoffrey Donaldson saying we've still got our 7 tests to apply to it.
There you go. Another thing. Okay, on Sunday when he was on various shows, Dominic Raab, the Justice Secretary, he wouldn't quite say if there was going to be a vote on this in Parliament.
Yeah, we still don't know that.
Parliament will have its say. Now, does that mean they get to debate it?
Yeah.
Or it means there's an actual vote? Now, what we've heard, Mark, in just the last few minutes, is there won't be a vote this week.
Yeah. Here's the quote from Prime Minister's questions of Rishi Sunak. Of course the House will have a view on it.
Yeah.
That's not saying they'll have a vote on it.
As Dominic Raab said, the House will have its say. Now, if there's not a vote, that is a dangerous... They're delaying the decision on whether there's going to be a vote by saying there's not going to be a vote this week.
OK.
As Darren McCaffrey said earlier, and he's completely right, if the Tory backbenchers aren't given a vote, right, they will take control of the order paper and they will find a way to have a vote. They'll amend another piece of legislation making
to get it onto the order paper.
Making that a symbolic vote about this.